Hey, it's Medicosis Perfectionalis, where medicine makes perfect sense, and today we'll talk about your digestive system and how it works. What's the role of motility? What's the role of secretion? Is there a difference between intracellular digestion and extracellular digestion? What is mechanical digestion? What is chemical digestion? And we will start reviewing your gastrointestinal system from head to toe. Or should I say, from mouth to anus. Your upper orifice is supplied by cranial nerves 7 and 9. Your lower orifice is supplied by the pelvic nerve, mostly. The rest of the gut is the landscape of the vagus nerve. This is my biology playlist. Please watch these videos in order. Let's start by answering the question of the previous video. Why are you tired after a big meal? We have gazillion reasons. These are just 3. Number 1, eating stimulates the parasympathetic autonomic nervous system, which is known as rest and digest. Rest and digest. So when I digest, I rest. Why? Because both are the functions of parasympathetic nervous system. That's why when you're eating, you're tired. You're not active and running from a tiger. No, you're just resting. Drowsy and sleepy. Number 2, the alkaline tide. What the flip does that mean? It means that when your stomach secretes acid to the inside part of the stomach, it has to secrete a base to the outside part of the stomach. Why is this? It's an exchange. It's an acid for base. It's similar to the law of electroneutrality, positive ions and negative ions, but just for acids and bases. Put an acid in, you'll have to put a base out. This is how your proton pump works, and we'll discuss this in a later video. You know what's here outside? Yeah, your blood vessels. So bicarbonate, the base, is going to my blood? Absolutely right. What were the 3 main stimuli to your chemoreceptors? Hypoxia, hypercapnia, acidosis. If acidosis is a stimulator, what do you think alkalosis is? Oh, an inhibitor of my chemoreceptors. That's why your brain is not stimulated, your brain is inhibited, particularly the brain stem, which contains the respiratory center. Therefore, you are inhibited when it comes to respiration. You will decrease the depth and the rate of your respiration. When you're breathing less, what do you think is going to happen to your oxygenation? Oh, I'll decrease oxygen. And according to Dalton's law, the doofus who said that oxygen and carbon dioxide hate each other, when oxygen falls, carbon dioxide will rise.
But hey, Medicosis, Dalton never said that. Dalton actually said that in a mixture of non-reacting gases, the total pressure exerted is equal to the sum of the partial pressure of individual gases.
Alright, so you keep memorizing everything like an absolute donkey without understanding. Let's play this game. Here is pressure total equals the pressure of the first gas plus the pressure of the second gas. Isn't this what Dalton said?
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Alright. Suppose that this remains constant and P1 decreases. What do you think should happen to P2?
Well, it should increase, of course, so that P total remains constant.
In other words, when oxygen decreases, carbon dioxide increases. Put simply, oxygen and carbon dioxide hate each other. Use the KISS principle and try to keep it simple, stupid. What do you think is going to happen to you when your oxygen falls and your carbon dioxide rises? Do you think you'll be actively slaying the dragon? No, you'll be tired as a couch potato. Reason number 3, after a big meal, your stomach gets full, presses on the diaphragm, pushes the diaphragm upwards. This diaphragm ascension decreases the volume of your thoracic cavity, making it harder for you to breathe, which worsens the problem. Thankfully, this is reversible. You will come back down to earth. Types of digestion. We can classify it based on where does it happen or what is actually happening. Based on where it's happening, we have intracellular digestion and extracellular digestion. Based on what is happening, we have mechanical digestion, motility, and chemical digestion, secretion.
Tell me about intracellular versus extracellular.
Okay, intracellular digestion happens in every cell in your body. Like all of them? Yeah, all of the 100 trillion of them? Yeah, that's about right. The cell is taking oxygen and nutrients, burning the nutrients in the presence of oxygen, aerobic metabolism, and releasing energy for the cell to consume, and sometimes in the form of heat, and some waste plus carbon dioxide. The cell is literally eating. This is intracellular digestion, which is not to be confused with what is happening in the lumen, in the cavities of your digestive system. What's happening in your stomach, what's happening in your duodenum, jejunum, ileum, etc. The next classification is based on the process that's taking place. Is it mechanical digestion or chemical digestion? Mechanical digestion is the motility. Your gut wall is moving. We call this movement peristalsis, to propel the food forwards. Or backwards if you're vomiting, but that's a story for another time. Motility is by the myenteric plexus, which we discussed in the previous video. Where do I find most of my smooth muscles? In the musculosa of the wall of your gut. Next, we have chemical digestion. This is the story of secretions. Secretions of what? GI enzymes and GI hormones, gastrointestinal enzymes and hormones. The gastrointestinal enzymes are digestive enzymes for digestion, and you have to digest in order to be able to absorb. No digestion, no absorption. That's why these GI enzymes are key.
Alright, medicoses, but what's the purpose of GI hormones?
They can boost motility and boost secretions, or inhibit motility and inhibit secretions, as we will discuss in later videos.
Hey medicosis, can you give me an example of a GI enzyme?
Sure. Pepsin, which comes from your stomach, starts as pepsinogen, later becomes pepsin. Or trypsinogen, which comes from your pancreas, starts as trypsinogen, then becomes trypsin.
Can you give me examples of GI hormones?
Sure, we have gastrin, which comes from the stomach mainly. It also comes from your small intestine. We have secretin, which comes from the upper part of small intestine, and we have cholecystokinin pancreozymin, which comes from the upper part of small intestine as well. More on that later, don't get confused.
Where do the secretions take place?
From the superficial layer of the gut wall, in the submucosa by the submucosal plexus. The mucosa can secrete too. Quick review, this is easy. Let's start upstairs. What do we have? We have the mouth, and then the pharynx, esophagus, stomach, and then the small intestine, which has three parts. First is the duodenum, and then the jejunum. After this, we have the ileum. The terminal ileum terminates by ending up in the colon or large intestine, which starts with the cecum, which contains your lovely appendix. A bunch of doofuses called it appendix because they said,
oh, it has no function, let's just call it appendix. Like an appendage.
Well, modern science revealed that it actually serves a function. It has lots of mucosa-associated lymphatic tissue. Lots of lymph nodes and immune cells live in the appendix.
Can I live without it?
Yes, many people survive after appendectomies, which is a surgery to remove your appendix. But this does not mean that it is useless or that it's an appendage. After the cecum, we have ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, sigmoid colon, rectum, which is huge, and then anal canal. When you feel you kind of like to go to the bathroom, but you delay going to the bathroom for a day, all of this crap, forgive my language, is mainly stored in the rectum. The rectum can hold a lot. Let's go up to your pharynx because this is a part that confuses many students. Look, here's the deal. All of this is the pharynx. The pharynx is behind three things. It's behind your nasal cavity, it's behind your oral cavity, it's also behind your laryngeal cavity, all right? The part of the pharynx behind your nasal cavity is called nasopharynx. Duh! The part of the pharynx behind the oral cavity is the oropharynx. And the part of the pharynx behind your larynx is the laryngopharynx. Now, when you eat, where do you think food goes through? It goes through your mouth, that's true, and then goes to the oropharynx, absolutely right, and then we go to the lovely esophagus.
Doesn't it go to my trachea?
No, it should not go to your trachea. If it does, you will cough it out.
Who prevents it from going into my respiratory tract?
The epiglottis. You see this glottis? It will rise and will get closed by the epiglottis. The word epi means above, so this is the glottis and this is the epiglottis. Next, let's talk about your sphincters. You got all kinds of sphincters. Here's my esophagus. Upper part is called upper esophageal sphincter. Lower part is called lower esophageal sphincter. Since this area is very dense and since this part is squeezed into oblivion by the crura of the diaphragm, the lower esophageal sphincter is not a robust muscle. There is no space for it to grow and become a very strong muscle. Since this is weak, you can get reflux. Reflux of what? Of the acid in the stomach back to the esophagus. That's not normal. That's called acid reflux, which causes heartburn. Heartburn is not in your heart, it's in your lower esophagus. After the stomach, we have the pylorus, which contains the pyloric sphincter. And then we go down here to see your anal canal. You have an internal anal sphincter and an external anal sphincter. The internal is involuntary, which is autonomic. The external is voluntary, supplied by somatic nerve fibers. What do you think the effect of sympathetic nervous system will be on your sphincters? How about the parasympathetic nervous system? Let's think about this. Sympathetic is fight and flight. Oh yeah, that makes sense. Therefore, if I'm fighting and running for my life, do you think it is time for me to eat and digest and defecate? Of course not. Therefore, I will shut down all of the sphincters, squeeze them, constrict the sphincter muscles to prevent the passage of food or stool. Conversely, the parasympathetic is rest and digest. I'm resting and digesting. I'm actually eating. Well, it's time for you to relax your sphincters, to let the food pass and to let the stool pass to the outside world, i.e. into the toilet, causing a loud splash. Here is the sympathetic nervous system. It will go to your internal sphincter, which is involuntary, under autonomic nervous system control, like the sympathetic, and it will contract that sphincter so that you do not defecate while running from a tiger. It's not appropriate. I mean, if Lionel Messi is on the final match of the World Cup, do you think it's appropriate for Lionel Messi, while confronting the goalkeeper in the last minute, to poop his pants? No, it will be inappropriate. We should focus our attention on the game, on the fight, not on pooping and peeing. And that's why sympathetic also is going to constrict your internal urethral sphincter. Prevent urination, prevent defecation. So the sympathetic nervous system contracts your sphincters. However, it relaxes the wall of the gut. Why? Because if you contract the wall of the gut, you will poop, you will digest. We don't want this during dangerous situations. So relax the wall, let the gut relax, and constrict the sphincter to tell the gut to shut the flip up. Same thing happens to the bladder. Sympathetic nervous system will relax the wall of the bladder, but contracts its internal urethral sphincter. How about the parasympathetic nervous system? Well, it is pro-digestion, pro-eating, pro-drinking. Parasympathetic is pro-urination and defecation. That's why it will contract the wall, but relax the sphincter. And this point will be extremely important when you study pharmacology later. Some people suffer from diseases where their urinary bladder is too active. What do? Give them something to shut their bladder up, i.e. something anti-parasympathetic. But what if my bladder is too weak? Give me something to squeeze my bladder and increase its contractility, i.e. something pro-parasympathetic. Let's talk about types of control. And as Dr. Stephen Covey said, you take control of that which you can control. We have nervous control and hormonal control in the body. Nervous is super duper fast, hormonal is slow, because we have to leave the cell. And since the cell and the gland is ductless, we have to go to the bloodstream and wait until we go to the heart. And wait until we get pumped out of the heart, and wait until we reach the target organ. All of this takes time. But nervous system is about nerve impulses, very fast. Nervous system is always firing. Hormonal system only secreted on demand, like freaking Netflix or Hulu or whatever the flip you watch. Nervous stimulation could be somatic, voluntary, like contracting my biceps muscle, or autonomic, like contracting my colon. Hormonal stimulation is always automatic, involuntary. I know of no man who can tell his cholecystokinin that it's time for you to stop. Some glands are endocrine, without ducts. They dump their secretion into the bloodstream, or exocrine. They do have ducts and they will secrete their secretions into those ducts. If you secrete your secretions into the bloodstream, this will take you to distant places all over the body. But if you're exocrine and you secrete your secretions or enzymes into this lovely duct, it will take you only to local surrounding locations. Moreover, there are glands inside the GI tract itself, and there are accessory glands on the outside. What do you mean by glands inside the gut itself? Well, look at the stomach, for example. The stomach has cells inside the wall, part of the mucosa and submucosa. They can secrete. Those are glands inside the GI tract. How about outside them? Well, salivary gland. This is not a tube through which the food passes. How about your pancreas? It is not a tube through which the food passes. It's an accessory gland. How about my liver? It's also an accessory gland. Don't forget that your salivary glands are divided into major and minor salivary glands. Minor salivary glands are literally thousands, scattered all over the mucosa of your lips, your tongue, and the cavity of your mouth, like the inner linings of your cheeks. How about the major salivary glands? You only have 3 pairs. Let's go. Parotid, submandibular, sublingual. What stimulates me to drink or not drink? We have antidiuretic hormone from the hypothalamus, which can also be stimulated or inhibited by whether you're drinking or not, as well as aldosterone. Who secreted ADH? The hypothalamus, and then hypothalamus gave it to the posterior pituitary. Who secretes aldosterone? Your adrenal cortex. Do you remember which zona? If you said zona glomerulosa, give yourself a little hug. Absolutely true. Let's review. Glomerulosa secretes aldosterone. Fasciculata secretes cortisol. Reticularis secretes adrenal androgens, such as dihydroepiandrosterone. Who named these things? Well, it has the word andro in it, and as you know, andro means a man. Androsterone means it's a steroid hormone that's responsible for andro. It's an androgen, genesis of manhood. Okay, medicosis, why do I feel full right now? You can thank leptin and CCK. Who makes leptin? Fat cells or adipose tissue and your small intestine enterocytes. How about CCK? It's made in the upper part of small intestine. We call it cholecystokinin. The old name is pancreozymin. I use both because they mean something, as you will discover in the next video. But why am I so hungry right now? Ghrelin and glucagon. Who makes ghrelin? Stomach and pancreas. Who make glucagon? The pancreas. You know how I remember it? Tell me, medicosis. Leptin is like leptin tea. Here is the tea bag, and here is a teeny tiny thin thread. Leptin wants you to be thin. That's why it makes you feel full, so that you stop eating, so that you become thin. Conversely, ghrelin wants you to be obese as a fat gargoyle. Let's review your digestive system from head to toe. Let's start in the mouth. We have mechanical digestion and chemical digestion in the mouth. What do you mean by mechanical digestion in my mouth? Well, you are chewing food. It's called mastication, which is a voluntary process by skeletal muscles supplied by motor somatic nerve, such as cranial nerve V3, which is the mandibular branch of the trigeminal nerve. Next, chemical. Your mouth secretes. This is saliva. Yes, remember we have minor salivary glands in the mouth, and we also have major salivary glands in and around the mouth. Salivary glands secrete saliva. Well, no duh. And saliva contains salivary amylase known as ptyalin for digestion of carbohydrate. For example, you break down the big starch or glycogen into small maltose and dextrin. Starch is the big form of carbohydrate that comes from plants. Glycogen is the main form of big carbs which come from animals. There is also some teeny tiny amount of lipase in your saliva, and this is to break down lipids, which means fat. Salivary glands again are parotid, submandibular, and sublingual. What's the name of the cranial nerve that supplies the parotid gland? It's cranial nerve number 9, the glossopharyngeal. How about the nerve that supplies both submandibular and sublingual? This is cranial nerve 7, which is the facial nerve. Now, which ganglion is the glossopharyngeal using? It's called the otic ganglion. Why? Because the word otic means ear, and the parotid means para-otic, near the ear. Oh, that makes sense. The parotid gland is near my ear. That's right. How about the sub and the sub? The nerve will relay in the submandibular ganglion. The sub is in the sub, the parotid is in the attic. Sub in the sub, parotid in the attic. Do you remember when we talked about this before in my embryology videos? Yeah, the back of the tongue, this is glossopharyngeal. This is the otic ganglion. This is the parotid gland saliva. This is the lesser petrosal nerve. Let's talk about the front of the tongue. When we're talking about saliva secretion by the front of the tongue, we're talking about cranial nerve 7, the facial nerve. We're talking about submandibular and sublingual glands. We're talking about a submandibular ganglion, and the branch is called the chorda tympani. Not only the nerves are different, whether you're talking about the back of the tongue or the front of the tongue, the embryological origin of the tongue is different. The back of the tongue comes from one place, the front of the tongue comes from a different place. That's why they have different nerve supply. See, medicine makes so much sense once you understand what the flip you're talking about. We left the mouth. Let's go to the pharynx. All right. The mouth gave us a bolus. The bolus will go to the pharynx in order to be swallowed. Swallowing is also known as deglutition by people who are super sophisticated to the point of being stupid. They have to invent some names to make the life of medical students hell. The food is going to move inside the esophagus by peristalsis from upstairs to downstairs. We're going down. That's normal. But what if I'm going up? This is called reverse peristalsis. That's not normal. It means that you're vomiting.
Why do people vomit?
It's a protective mechanism. Let's say that you ingested lots of toxins. They irritated your mucosa, so you will vomit it. Or let's say that you have acidemia or acidosis. Oh, lots of acid in my blood. Do you know what the body will do? The body will get rid of the acid because the stomach contains HCl. When I vomit, I get rid of acid, HCl, to make my blood less acidic. That's why many patients in the hospital with acidosis are vomiting, something that most doctors do not know. That's why the name of this channel is Medicosis Perfectionalis. After I swallow the food, it goes to the esophagus. The esophagus is made of 3 parts: upper part, middle part, and guess what? Lower part. Upper part is voluntary, skeletal muscle. You volitionally swallow. How about the lower third? Oh, that's smooth muscles, involuntary. You cannot control it. The in-between is in-between. It's mixed. Some skeletal, some smooth intermingle together. And then before we know it, we will reach the lower esophageal sphincter, which will relax and open so that the food reaches your stomach. Speaking of the stomach, we have mechanical and chemical. Mechanical means motility, means peristalsis, means it happens by the musculosa and by the branch of the enteric nervous system known as the myenteric plexus, aka urbs plexus. And we have chemical digestion in the stomach, which means secretion of GI enzymes such as pepsin or pepsinogen before it gets active. And this happens by your chief cells. And we have GI hormones, such as gastrin, which is secreted by the G cells of the stomach. As you know, secretions is the land of the submucosa, which contains the submucosal plexus, also known as Meissner's plexus. Your stomach has many cells. I'll give you just 3. Parietal cell secretes the acid. Why is the acid important? Because it takes that inactive pepsinogen, which comes from the chief cell, and converts it to active pepsin. In order for this to happen, the stomach gotta be very acidic. Who's gonna provide the acid? Hydrochloric acid, which comes from parietal cell. Why do you call it pepsinogen? Because it will cause genesis of pepsin. Oh, that makes sense. You want a fun fact? You know Pepsi Cola, like Coca-Cola and Pepsi? Yeah, why do they call it Pepsi? Because originally Coca-Cola was developed by a pharmacist. Then Pepsi tried to mimic the idea by saying, oh, drink our drink and it will help your digestion. Oh, let's call it Pepsi. Because it's pepsin, digestion, stomach. Whether Pepsi actually helps or hinders digestion is an empiric question, not a foregone conclusion. And we have G cells, which secrete gastrin. Try to remember this and memorize it, and bring a blank piece of paper and write it down, because in the next video it will get even crazier. And now, quiz time! Almost all of the enzymes in your body work at physiological pH, and as you know, your physiological pH in the arterial blood is about 7.4, which means slightly alkaline. Most of your enzymes work in an alkaline environment, with one famous exception. Can you let me know the answer in the comment section? You'll find the answer key, as always, in the next video. If you want to learn about the pharmacology of the gastrointestinal system, I have an Utacoids pharmacology course on my website, medicosisperfectionalis.com. I also happen to have a renal physiology course, which you can download instantly. And I mean right now. Learning is fun. That's why I thank you for watching. Please subscribe, hit the bell, and click on the join button. You can support me here or here. Go to my website to download my courses. Be safe, stay happy, study hard. This is Medicosis Perfectionalis, where medicine makes perfect sense.